Today, the Philippines is sinking, quite literally. The largest river in the country, the mighty Cagayan River, has overflowed, triggering catastrophic flash floods that have left an indelible mark on the nation. This is not just another headline. This is a calamity that has swept across 6 regions, displacing hundreds of thousands and leaving communities grappling with a harsh reality. How did we get here? And more importantly, what does this mean for the Philippines and its future? December 2024 was anything but ordinary. It started with the aftermath of Typhoon Tsunami, which had already drenched the Philippines in late October, displacing nearly 1 million people. But just as the nation began to pick up the pieces, Typhoon Kongray and Typhoon Ying-Xing arrived in quick succession, adding layers of destruction. Then came the storm to end all storms, Super Typhoon Man-Yi. Making landfall, Man-Yi hit with sustained winds of 195 kilometers per h, 121 miles per hour, tearing through communities like a relentless predator. The storm, part of a staggering sequence of 6 major typhoons within a single month, was unprecedented in its timing and intensity. To put it into perspective, November usually sees about 3 named storms, with only one typically reaching super typhoon status. Yet here we were, living through a statistical anomaly, one that scientists say has been made all too common by climate change. Let's break it down. Why are these storms happening and why now? The short answer is climate change. Warmer sea surface temperatures, a direct result of human-induced global warming, have turbocharged tropical storms, turning them into veritable engines of destruction. Higher humidity levels and intensified atmospheric instability create a perfect storm, quite literally, for typhoons like Man-Yi to grow in size and ferocity. The World Weather Attribution Service reported that storms of this magnitude are now 25% more likely due to climate change. Think about that for a moment. What was once considered a freak occurrence is now the new normal, a chilling reality for a nation that already sits squarely in the path of the Pacific's typhoon highway. Central to this crisis is the Cagayan River, a lifeline turned menace. Stretching over 500 kilometers, it is the Philippines' largest river, a vital source of water, agriculture, and livelihood for millions. But in November, it became a symbol of nature's unforgiving power. Heavy rains from typhoons, Tsunami, Kongray, and Ying-Xing had already pushed the river to its brink. By November 11th, before Man-Yi even made landfall, Cagayan province was already experiencing severe flooding. Fields transformed into lakes, roads disappeared underwater, and homes became islands in an ocean of despair. Then Man-Yi arrived, unleashing torrents of rain that overwhelmed the river's capacity entirely. The Philippine Space Agency captured satellite images showing vast stretches of the province submerged, a visual testament to the scale of the disaster. For the people of Cagayan and beyond, the flooding was not just an inconvenience, it was a full-blown humanitarian crisis. By the end of November, over 200,000 individuals had been displaced. Imagine packing up your life not once but multiple times, as each new storm forces you to flee yet again. This was the reality for many families, some of whom had barely recovered from the last typhoon when the next one struck. Homes were destroyed. Over 250,000 residences were reported as damaged or completely obliterated. Infrastructure crumbled under the relentless assault. Bridges that once connected communities now lay in ruins, and roads, the lifelines for rescue and relief operations, were rendered impassable. Essential services, from power grids to communication networks, failed in many areas, leaving residents isolated and vulnerable. The economic toll was equally staggering. Preliminary estimates put the damage to agriculture, livestock, and infrastructure at a jaw-dropping $47 million. Rice fields, ready for harvest, were swallowed whole by the floodwaters, leaving farmers in despair. Livestock, a critical source of income for rural families, were swept away. For a country where agriculture forms a significant part of the economy, these losses are a severe blow. And then there's the human toll, the most heartbreaking aspect of all. Hundreds lost their lives, and countless others were injured in the chaos. Displaced families crowded into evacuation centres, which quickly became overcrowded and under-resourced. The lack of clean water and sanitation facilities created a breeding ground for disease, compounding an already dire situation. Humanitarian organisations reported alarming rates of waterborne illnesses such as cholera and dysentery. Children, the elderly, and those with pre-existing health conditions were particularly vulnerable. Food security also emerged as a critical issue, with many families relying on sporadic food aid to survive. The scale of the disaster prompted a swift response both locally and internationally. The Philippine government allocated $17 million for immediate relief efforts, a commendable but ultimately insufficient amount given the enormity of the crisis. Food packs, medical supplies, and temporary shelters were distributed, but demand far outstripped supply. The Philippine Red Cross played a pivotal role, working tirelessly alongside local authorities to provide emergency assistance. International aid organizations and neighboring countries also stepped in, with the United Nations spearheading efforts to assess needs and coordinate aid distribution. However, logistical challenges, damaged infrastructure, and the sheer scale of the affected area hampered these efforts, leaving many communities still waiting for help weeks after the storms. As the waters recede, the focus now shifts to recovery, a monumental task that will require not just resources, but resilience. Experts are calling for a two-pronged approach: immediate relief for affected communities and long-term strategies to mitigate future disasters. Building resilient infrastructure is at the top of the agenda. This includes flood control systems, storm-resistant housing, and better road networks to ensure that communities can withstand future storms. Disaster preparedness programs are also being revisited, with an emphasis on community-based initiatives that empower locals to act swiftly and effectively in times of crisis. But perhaps the most crucial element is addressing the root cause: climate change. The Philippines has long been a vocal advocate for global action on climate issues, and this disaster underscores the urgency of those calls. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions, transitioning to renewable energy, and investing in sustainable practices are not just lofty goals, they are existential necessities for a nation on the front lines of climate change. The flooding crisis in Cagayan is a wake-up call for the Philippines and the world. It's a stark reminder of how vulnerable we are in the face of nature's fury, particularly when compounded by the effects of climate change. But it's also a testament to the resilience of the Filipino people, who continue to endure and rebuild despite unimaginable hardships. As the nation rallies to recover, there's a pressing need for solidarity, not just among Filipinos but from the global community. Because the truth is, what's happening in the Philippines today could happen anywhere tomorrow. Climate change knows no borders, and its impacts are felt far and wide. If this series of incidents has moved you, don't just scroll past. Share it, discuss it, and let it serve as a call to action. The time to act on climate change is now. Together, we can build a future where headlines like this become a thing of the past.